We just got our last major update before Globals, and Fortnite did not disappoint with bringing the drama. We now have a brand new POI that has Peterbot contesting it. So Peterbot is now triple conned, and it somehow nerfed Poyo's drop as well. We also have huge changes to the loot pool. We have an airstrike item being added, the new roly-poly mobility. I want to talk about all the new drop spots for Globals because it has changed up so much. We now have Khanada and Clix going at it, both of them trying to steal each other's loot coming into Globals, which is getting very, very spicy. And I just want to recap how the Eval Cup went, because for an Eval Cup, it was ridiculous. There is a lot to talk about. Let's jump into it. I'm not sure where to even start because we have so much to go over. We'll kick off with Dystopia City. So the bugs have finally overtaken Utopia City. If you've been watching my YouTube content, you saw this coming. The leaks have been pointing towards it. I've been talking about it. I didn't know it was going to buff it this much, and I didn't know it was going to be so strong that Peterbot was going to switch drops to contest this for Global. So Utopia City has turned into Dystopia City, and it's gotten quite a large buff because it now has the Queen spawn. Not every game though. It has a 50-50 chance of spawning the Queen between Dystopia City and Demon's Debris, which means yes, Poyo Acorn Ages have just been pretty significantly nerfed. In the Eval Cup finals today, in finals, it spawned 2 out of the 4 games at each POI, and I've reached out to Asarian.gg, the GOATs. They checked the game files, and yes, it is a 50-50 spawn between these 2 POIs. So half the games, roughly, Peterbot and Epic Whale and Raito, there's 3 teams going Dystopia right now, will get it, and the other 6 games, Demon's Debris should get it. But again, it depends. Obviously, it's probability. It could go 8-4, 9-3, it could go 12-0 to one of these POIs, but most likely not. But Dystopia City got the Queen at least half the games, which gives it a huge buff. That means it gets the Demon's Debris coin, which is the double jump medallion. You are going to get the exotic OXR rifle, or sorry, mythic OXR rifle. You're going to get the slurps, and most importantly, you're going to get the A rank up. This means Dystopia City now does get the A rank, which gives this POI major priority on the bunkers around the map. This was enough for Peterbot to say, yo, I don't want to contest OXR anymore. I want to triple con Dystopia. So Epic Whale's team, who is not leaving, by the way, Epic Whale made a tweet and a bunch of people are falling for it. This is a lighthouse. Epic Whale is not dropping on a 5-chest lighthouse. This was a joke. Epic Whale and Raito's team both plan to contest at Dystopia City. Now, if I had to guess, if I was a betting man, I would say I think Raito's team is going to leave. And then I think it's going to be Peterbot versus Epic Whale. And if I had to guess, Epic Whale's team will be giving up the Queen every time it spawns and maybe trying to take some of the loot and disengage out. It'll kind of be like a raft situation from last Globals. Both teams might leave. Neither team might leave, but that would have to be my guess. I could be completely wrong. I don't know where Raito's team will go, but triple conning any POI isn't really worth it. But again, Peterbots came here when they were already going here, so I'm not really sure what's going to happen. Pete's obviously confident he can get at least one of these teams to leave, because I don't know what, I don't think Pete would leave single conned OXR to go triple conned unless he thought at least one of the teams was going to leave. But this is a huge buff for Vanny, Pixie, and Maris, who now are uncontested at the OXR base. This was a very, very big change only a week out from Globals. This isn't the only change we had on the global drop map. We now have Barker, Pump, and Pars leaving the field. They will no longer be contesting Pix, Dam, and Damus, and they're now going to be contesting Adapter's team, one of our Middle East teams, on the Shogun split, just south of First Order base. Now, that is very, very big for Pix, Dam, and Damus. They have now jumped up, in my opinion, into a pretty confident top 10 at Globals for me. Now, I was worried for Barker's team going into this spawn fight, because last time we saw Pix spawn fight, it was up against Thomas HD's team, and they kind of destroyed them. Pix, Dam, and Damus are very scary off spawn. There's a reason why this team went from never having made a grands to now making land within a year and being uncontested at pump power pretty much throughout the whole chapter on EU. Like, they are a very scary team. So I'm not confused at all why Barker, Pump, and Pars didn't want to go up against them. I don't know too much about Adapter's team, so we'll have to see whether they can hold their own against Barker. It's not a phenomenal drop on the old Shogun split, but hopefully we can see Barker's team pull it off. I will be rooting for them. Nothing against Adapter. Barker, Pump, and Pars have been my small region team to keep an eye out this entire time. I love cheering on the NA West boys. I love cheering on the controller players as well. Pump holding it down, hopefully, for NA controller players, but we'll see. If Adapter's team comes out and absolutely bodies them and goes crazy, I might have to switch teams, but we'll see how that one plays out. Those are our major Globals drop swaps now. Right now, there hasn't been pretty much anything else that's come up with this new update. Dystopia City was the only major POI to change, but we did have a slight buff and nerf around the map. So firstly, all of the black markets around the map, that includes Mr. Savage's drop on the Resistance base split, that also includes Veno's drop down at Canyon, they got buffed where previously the bugs didn't spawn at these POIs every single game, which means you got less loot and you didn't get the rank rank up every game. Now they do. They spawn every single game, and they also drop vulture boons. Vulture boons is the boon where if someone gets knocked or eliminated in the feed, I believe eliminated, you can then see them on the map, so you kind of know where they are. It can help you make plays and lurk plays and play more aggressive. It's a really good boon, and across the board, this is a very solid buff, especially because of the guaranteed hero rank you now get from taking down the bugs. This has buffed quite a few POIs around the map. I don't know what this changes for Mr. Savage's off-spawn situation, because like I said, Coyote right now is pretty much deciding between contesting Savage on the split or contesting Veno down at Canyon. And both of them did just get buffed the same. Now, Canyon did get nerfed a little bit, as did all the POIs that get the drones like Supernova, because the loot drones now drop less than half the loot they did previously. So when there's a hot drop, when the POI's name is in yellow, the loot drones are extremely strong, and a lot of us, myself included, were expecting them to get nerfed, and they have. They were dropping an absurd amount of loot. It almost felt like a glitch, and it looks like Fortnite has dialed that down. So all POIs that get the loot drones have been nerfed, including Clix's drop at Supernova. Now, there was another bug, which was unintentional though. The flags around the map, the catcher flags, were bugged today, which also nerfed a bunch of the POIs that get them, but Fortnite has confirmed that was a bug. They've now fixed them. That hasn't changed, but Supernova did get one other nerf, the launcher. Now, originally, I thought this was a bug because it's so terrible, it looks comical. Instead of flying to the moon, you know, launching to the stars and flying and going so far, you just plop off the end. Like, it's ridiculous. It looks broken. It doesn't look like it's meant to function like this. It just looks like a regular zip line, but apparently Clix got word from Epic Games. This is intentional. This is not a bug. It is meant to be this way. So Clix's drop has unfortunately gotten a couple nerfs here, and because of that, Clix is now making a way more aggressive play for more loot in his area. So Clix is now going to be dropping and taking loot over near Swarmy Stash from Khanada, Bolt, and Rapid. So originally Clix's team was getting the RV split, which is on top of the highway. Nothing too crazy, bit of metal, bit of loot. But what Clix's team is now started to try to get is actually the bug spawn loot just south of that. Khanada's team is not giving that up. They are willing to fight for it. And in the NA Eval Cup finals, we even had Khanada's team stealing Clix's POI, dropping at Supernova, and taking all their loot while Clix tried to take it. I'll talk about more of that later in the video when I recap the NA finals, but this update has very heavily changed drop spot for globals. As for the other parts of the update, we did have the airstrike added into the game and added into competitive. If you get what the airstrike is, this is it here, basically playing in the background. It's pretty much a nuke, and I was very scared to see how this was going to affect the game, and I just thought there's no way it goes into competitive. It did, but it does only do 75 damage to players, despite this just looking like an actual atomic bomb has been let off. But for the most part, it just destroyed all the builds. But I didn't even get to see anyone use it in the Eval Cup before it was removed. So it was in the game for a little bit, and I didn't see anyone use it, so I can't imagine it was that incredibly OP. I could be wrong. There might have been some crazy uses, especially in endgame rotating zones, but Fortnite made what I think is probably the wise decision and vaulted it from competitive. Another item that was added to the game but not added to competitive is the roly-poly, which is the mobility item I've been talking about, where you like turn into the bug and you kind of roll around. Now, it hasn't been put in competitive, it has been put in the regular game, but it's also not an item, it's a vehicle. You find them around the map and they have their own names, which is kind of cool. You can bounce around it. It seems kind of strong. I'm not going to focus on it too much unless it gets added to competitive. Fortnite might be waiting until globals is over to not change the meta, would be my guess. I feel like this would be balanced in competitive. I kind of hope it does get added to the game, especially for solos. I was hoping it was going to be an item, not a vehicle. I'm going to look to see if there's a way that I can add this into my creative map. Again, you guys have been loving it, using it to practice tournament late game solos if you want to check it out. I would like to put this in there as a vehicle or an item to practice with, because I think it will be really important for solos, but not if you can't carry it. I assumed it was going to be like the inflatable. You put it on your back and you just, you know, jump around with it. You turn into a bug and roll around. But if it's a vehicle, I don't think it'll have as much impact on the game, but I won't know until Fortnite adds it to competitive. I'm not going to judge its strength in pubs, basically. All right, let's talk about the Eval Cup finals. We'll kick off with NA because we have a lot to talk about on NA. This was our first chance to see Epic Whale versus Peterbot at the new POI, and Peterbot didn't qual. Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual, they all got on and played. It's the first Eval Cup of the season that Cold got on for. He's been grinding the other tournaments, but he's been skipping the Eval Cups, and unfortunately, they didn't qual. They missed out by about 5 points. A few more elims and they would have done it, but they ran out of games early. They dropped some crazy games. They had 40 bomb wins. They were popping off, but they just didn't get enough points in the 7-game format. Now, it's worth pointing out they were going demons in opens. They stuck to the POI they knew in open, so it's not because the new POI isn't good enough. It's not because the new POI sucks. They just didn't play well enough for the format. As usual, a lot of our big teams, they go out and drop 40 bombs, but they just die a few times on spawn. And in the format where Elam's only worth 1, it doesn't cut it. So Peterbot didn't make finals. We didn't get to see Epic Whale versus Peterbot. I was so excited, but the finals were still incredibly stacked. And we got to see another fight that I wasn't really expecting. We got to see Clix versus Khanada. Now, like I talked about, this was a weird one. So Clix's team came out the gates and started trying to steal Khanada's loot. I'll show you on the map here. It's this section of loot right here. It doesn't look like that much, but it means a lot to Khanada's team because their POI isn't very big, and most of the loot they get is because of the bugs in this area of the map. It's pretty much like necessary for their POI. But Clix's team, obviously not too happy with their POI getting triple nerfed today. The drones, the flag, and the launcher, which I already talked about, but across the board, their loot was a lot less. They started trying to steal a bit of Khanada's loot. Now, Khanada's team wasn't too happy with this because Clix's entire trio was landing there, meaning Khanada's team couldn't really do anything about it unless they wanted to fight it. We saw Bolts tweet out, yo, if anyone's looking for an uncontested drop, no one's dropping at Supernova because Clix was going there. That didn't work, so Bolts deleted the tweet and thought, hey, why don't we just drop there? And then we actually had Khanada's team land at Supernova, take Clix's loot, and then rotate back to their POI and take all their loot. Now, Clix's team wised up to this, so the next game, they landed at Supernova, but then tried to rush Khanada's team at the extra loot over near Swarmy. It led to a straight 3v3 fight, and this is how it went. So as far as I'm aware, Clix's team has been taking the loot up here, the RV's loot, which I don't think Khanada's team's too fussed about, but Khanada's team's trying to make sure they hold down here. They need this loot. Khanada, Rapid, and Bolts' POI pretty much relies on this loot here. If they don't get this, their POI is significantly shittier, so... Ooh, Clix tries to go for the long piece. Can't quite find it. Higgs gets it, though. Khanada gotta be careful not to get dropped down here. Clix's team, not fucking around here, man. We're playing aggressive. Higgs had to focus up, bro. We had to put on a serious skin for this. 29 tag on a Bolts. Higgs has the double pump. That could be the deciding factor in this fight here, I'm gonna be honest. Yomzo goes down. No, he doesn't. Never mind. Just gets beamed. They're going to get back together as a trio. Thought it might be some replay lag and we went down there. Now, is third party's going to come spoil this? Clix tries to go off for Fizzberry. Tries to get the elevation. And, oh, Clix misses the shot, unfortunately. Gets the second one. Takes down Oh, he doesn't take down Rapid. No. Disastrous for Clix here. Can't take down Rapid. 1 HP. He ends up falling. But Khanada, Bolts, and Rapid will win this exchange. And Bolts gets finished? Bolts gets finished. Clix is down and out, unfortunately. These teams also went at it the game before this, but they only knocked one. They disengaged. They rotated around. It wasn't the straight fight, but this was the actual straight 3v3 in the 4th game of the tournament. Clix's team went down. It meant that Clix wasn't able to get a win in the finals, but I'm interested to see how this plays out coming into Globals. This is definitely them both making a play to try to claim this loot for Globals. We have Div Cups this week before we have Globals next weekend. It feels insane to say next weekend, and I'm interested to see who ends up getting the loot. I don't think Khanada's team realistically can give it up. Without this loot, their POI is pretty shambles. Like, they need every piece of loot they can get. They're mid-map, which is fantastic. They have good surge trading options, but they need the extra loot to do it, and without this part of their split, they're not going to be able to make it happen. But if Clix, Higgs, Yomzo truly want to super aggressively fight for this loot, it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top with it. I think Clix's team could do without it potentially, but hey, if they want extra loot, who am I to say no? Like, if you think this is your chance to win Globals, locking down this extra loot, and this is going to help you do it, then Clix said at the start of the season he wants to go into Globals fighting and doing what he needs to win. He's not playing for a top 5, top 10. He's playing to win. So we'll see whether that mentality comes out on top, but I'm super excited to watch this fight as it develops. As far as which team was looking good out of NA coming into LAN, unfortunately, not a single Globals qualified team actually won a game in Eval Cup Finals. Curve, Tyler, and Craze continuing their insanely dominant run this season. I just feel so bad this trio isn't in Globals. They are doing it with the Hive loot, which is most people's opinion the best POI on the map right now. Because no one who's qualified to Globals wants to try to contest Queasy at Globals, the POI is just going up to the next best team that's not qualled LAN, and Curve, Tyler, and Craze are pretty much putting their mark on that. They got 2 wins and a 10 elim second. So 9 elim win, 10 elim second, and 15 elim win, including their second place to Peterbot's team a couple weeks ago in the Div Cup Finals. This trio is looking like one of the most dominant trios on NA, and they're not in Globals. Now, we also had a team I don't know too much about, Xavier's team getting a 10 elim win in Game 3, and then we had Evan, Dolzier, and Carbone getting a 6 elim win in Game 1. So no Globals teams walking away with a win here, but we did have some decent performances from some of our Globals teams. Clix, as always, super consistent until that last game. They managed to get an 8th, 7th, and 3rd until they went down to Khanada in game 4. Victor V, Epic Whale, and Paper with the new POI. They did manage to get a 7 elim 3rd, but again, no win for them. Rapid Khanada Bolts, because they were locked in that kind of mid-game fight with Clix, which was messing them up. Their best game was a 5 elim 5th. Muzz, Shadow, and Sphinx, unfortunately, having a really rough tournament. No single game inside the top 10. Visuals, Brazen, and Minish managed to get a 7 elim 3rd, but that was their best game overall. But it was a very rough tournament for our LAN teams. Now, big name team, Acorn, Ages, and Poyo. How did they handle not getting the Queen loot? And unfortunately, not great. In the 2 games, they didn't get the Queen spawning at Demons. They got a 3 elim 15th and a 6 elim 13th. In the last 2 games, when they did get the Queen loot, they got a 9 elim 4th and a 12 elim 3rd. So you can already see a significant performance difference when they get that extra loot. And it makes sense. It's a mythic, it's a medallion, it's guaranteed legendary slurps, and it's usually guaranteed exotic loot as well, because as long as they get the Queen, they get A rank, and they almost always get one of the 4 bunkers. So it's interesting to see how this is going to play out for Globals. Ages, Acorn, and Poyo have gone from having one of the best POIs, if not the best POI uncontested, to now having a good POI. But it is going to come down to RNG a little bit. It's going to depend on who gets the Queen more often and whether Acorn's team can pivot and do well without the Queen. Again, they did wake up for this update, and this was their first time playing with it. I'm sure they're going to hit the drawing board and come up with some VODs and try and figure out some kind of a strategy to work around the games where the Queen doesn't spawn, but it is a pretty significant nerf to what was one of the major favorites coming into Globals. EU was a completely different story. Instead of no teams getting a win that were qualified for LAN, we had almost all 4 games going to LAN qualified teams. We had Vico, Veno, Flixie pulling off a 16 elim win after a 12 elim 2nd and an 8 elim 6th. So whatever vibes issues we were worried about with Vico, Veno, Flixie, they're looking extremely dominant coming into this week's tournaments now. They probably put it behind them. They are all competitors. They know Globals is now next weekend. This is the time to lock in and focus. So even with their flag spawn being glitched, they didn't get it a single time. It has now been fixed. That would have hurt their loot. They still absolutely popped off. Now, Vanya, Pixie, Marius got a 20 elimination win 2-0. So we had a 16 elim win and a 20 elim win. So EU absolutely just the fireworks coming out. They didn't have too much consistency outside of this. Vanya's team got a 14th, 11th, and 21st. They are now uncontested with OXR. They did get dropped on a couple of the games though, but coming into Globals, they will be uncon. So I'm excited to see this team start to, get some of their form built up. Now they know they're unconned. Then we had Pix, Dharm, and Damus getting a 14 elim win. Again, the polls are now uncontested the fields. They're looking extremely solid. And then our last win though, our non-LAN qualified team went to Karama's team, who got a 10 elimination win for the Frenchies. A lot of our big LAN teams did make finals on EU though. We had Focus, Mix, and Upwell, but instead of going Shogun, they actually went to Dystopia because again, they just wanted to get a better chance of winning. They said there's no point practicing at Shoguns uncontested. They're going to be uncontested at Globals. They'd rather just try and make some money in the Eval Cup, which I can understand. We did have Chino, Pablo, and Frodoxy make the finals. The Danes are back in form, but unfortunately, when they make finals, Tayson's team doesn't. So we didn't get to see our Frodoxy versus Tayson, which made not being able to see Pete versus Epic Whale even sadder. The 2 big LAN fights I wanted to watch on each region just didn't happen. They played well though. They got an 8 elim 5th and a 5 elim 7th, 2 top 10 placements. Then we also had Chap playing alongside Fastroki and Ankido. That's because Savage and Rezon weren't able to play because of a Red Bull obligation, I believe is what I heard. We had iDrop, Hari, and Cammy, who had 1 game inside the top 10. Nothing too crazy, but not an insane performance from them. Ping, Wox, and Malabuka managed to get a 4th and a 9th. A lot of teams looking at Malabuka to see if they can start to pick up their performances coming into Globals. Seti, Yapko, and Panzer got a 7 elim 4th, but that was their best game of the day. And then we didn't actually have Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache in the finals. So Seti, Yapko, Panzer, that was our first time seeing them contested at Kappa Kappa. They weren't contested obviously by a LAN team because it's OCE's Tinker that's going to contest them at Globals, but they held up pretty well off spawn overall. Nothing super crazy, but they do have time to practice and start to lock in. But EU was extremely fun to watch, but it was very W key heavy. You can tell most of the trios on every region are just done with trios. They're focused on duos. There's one more week of trio tournaments. If they're not in Globals, they just don't really care, honestly. And the Globals teams, while they've got Globals, a lot of them don't see the point in practicing as much right now when they're not versing teams they're going to verse in Globals. Again, with Surge Trading being such a heavy focus in the meta, it feels like finals just aren't almost even worth practicing if the teams that are dropping around you aren't the teams you're going to verse at Globals, because it's just not realistic practice. So it's been fun fun to watch, but if the Div Cup feels a little bit W key heavy as well, that's pretty much the reason why everyone's losing focus for trios and just trying to focus in on duos. Our last piece of big news, we have the reveal of the FNCS champion pickaxe. Now, this is going to be the pickaxe that the global champions are going to win, and honestly, I like it. It's not my favorite FNCS pickaxe, but I definitely like it more than the Blade of Champions. The sword just wasn't for me. Again, it is the FNCS pickaxe I ended up winning from the Pro-Am, which kind of unfortunate is my least favorite pickaxe, but hey, it was a bit of a flex. It was a bit of a meme that they even gave it to me, but my ranking for FNCS pickaxes point is probably, you know, the Chapter 2 one, the shiny big pickaxe. I like that one probably the most. I think the original Chapter 1 gold pickaxe, I'm going to give it to, and then this one, and then the sword. But honestly, the gold pickaxe and this new one are kind of tied for me. It might just take a little bit of time to grow on me. I definitely don't dislike it. I think it's a clean pickaxe. It's cool that it's back to a big two-handed pickaxe. I think a lot of people just don't really like the one-handed pickaxe, especially because it was just smaller. It had some cool features with the sword, like spelling out FNCS when you swung with it. Being able to split it in two with its own emote was cool, but across the board, I think a lot of people do want to go back to the big, very clear, identifiable FNCS pickaxes.